The warship remained in orbit, its crew shaken and silent. The loss of the probes and the scout team had turned their mission from a simple scan of a dead world into something far more dangerous. Admiral Kren stood motionless, staring at the swirling clouds of Earth below. His mind raced with possibilities, but none of them made sense. If there were survivors, how had they stayed hidden for so long? The Dominion had ensured humanity's destruction. There had been no mercy, no escape. Every colony had been burned, every last human exterminated. The galaxy had moved on, believing them gone forever. But now there was proof that something remained. Kren's sharp voice cut through the tension. "Prepare a landing team." Volric spun toward him, disbelief on his face. "You're insane. We lost an entire scout team. We lost 2 probes. Something down there does not want us to see it." Kren's expression didn't change. "And that's exactly why we need to see it." The crew hesitated. No one wanted to set foot on that cursed world. But orders were orders. Within minutes, a heavily armed landing craft detached from the warship and began its descent. Kren watched from the bridge as it entered the thick atmosphere, disappearing beneath the heavy gray clouds. The communication link crackled with static before stabilizing. "Landing craft en route," came the pilot's voice. "Approaching former human city. Atmosphere is stable, but radiation pockets detected. No signs of life." The crew listened in tense silence as the ship neared the surface. The ruins of the once great city loomed below, a graveyard of steel and concrete. The streets were filled with rusted vehicles, their windows shattered, their frames half buried in dust. Towering skyscrapers stood like broken teeth against the stormy sky. The landing craft touched down in the center of a massive plaza, its thrusters kicking up a cloud of dust. The team deployed quickly, their weapons raised as they scanned the empty streets. Their voices crackled over the comms. "Area is clear. No movement. Checking radiation levels, manageable for short-term exposure. No bodies. No signs of battle. Just emptiness." Then came the first scream. It was sudden, sharp, and cut off as quickly as it began. The entire bridge froze. Kren's grip on the console tightened. "Report." No response. The communication feed filled with static, then flickered back to life for a brief moment. A soldier's voice, panting, desperate. "Not alone. Something's here." Gunfire erupted, shouting. Another scream. Then silence. The connection cut out completely. The warship's crew stood in stunned horror. Volric turned to Kren, his expression grim. "We're leaving. Now." Kren didn't answer. His eyes were locked onto the surface below. Whatever had taken the landing team, whatever had remained hidden on Earth for centuries, was now awake. And it had just sent them a message. It had been 3 days since Admiral Kren's surrender. The Dominion High Command had received the transmission, and the entire Empire was in chaos. No one had believed it at first. Humanity was supposed to be a memory, a failed species erased from the stars. Yet the undeniable truth was now before them. Earth had not only survived, but it had grown into something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. On the bridge of the Dominion flagship Imperator's Will, Supreme Warlord Xervok watched the recordings of the battle with a deep, simmering rage. The way the human ships moved, their weapons, their tactics, none of it made sense. How had they advanced so far in complete secrecy? A low growl escaped his throat. "How many of our fleets have engaged them?" A subordinate hesitated before answering. "3, Warlord. All have been destroyed." Xervok's eyes narrowed. "Destroyed? Destroyed." He slammed his clawed fist against the console, cracking the surface. "Are you telling me that this remnant of humanity has wiped out 3 Dominion fleets?" The officer bowed his head. "Yes, Supreme Warlord." Silence filled the chamber. The Dominion had conquered countless species. They had brought entire star systems to their knees. Never had they faced an enemy that could fight back like this. Where are the humans now? Sirvok asked. They're advancing toward the Central Dominion worlds. Warlord, their fleet is unlike anything we have seen before. They do not simply destroy. The officer hesitated, choosing his words carefully. They eliminate threats with precision. Their strategy is surgical. Every military outpost, every shipyard in their path has been obliterated. Zervok leaned forward, his mind racing. The humans were not just waging war. They were sending a message. He turned to his generals. How long until they reached the capital? A holographic map flickered to life, showing the human fleet's trajectory. A grim answer followed. Less than a week. Zervok bared his fangs. Then we will meet them in battle. Send every available warship. The full might of the Dominion will crush them. But deep in his mind, a single unspoken thought gnawed at him. The Dominion had always been the hunters. But now, for the first time in history, they were the hunted. The silence on the bridge was suffocating. Admiral Kren had spoken the words, but they still felt foreign, unnatural. The mighty Dominion, surrendering to a species they had long since declared extinct. And yet, here they were, alive, stronger than ever, and demanding retribution. His officers stood frozen, awaiting orders. None of them had ever faced such humiliation. Surrender was unheard of in the Dominion, but what choice did they have? Their weapons were useless, their engines crippled, their escape routes cut off. A sudden chime broke the silence. A new transmission was coming through. Kren swallowed hard. Put it on screen. Admiral Kane's face appeared again, his expression unreadable behind his dark visor. But there was no arrogance in his stance, only cold certainty. Your surrender has been accepted, Admiral Kren. Stand down and prepare for boarding. Any resistance will be dealt with swiftly. Kren's claws clenched into fists. And what do you intend to do with us? Kane's answer came without hesitation. You'll answer for what the Dominion did to Earth. A shiver ran through Kren's spine. This wasn't just a battle. It was justice, long-delayed vengeance from a species that had been pushed to the brink and refused to die. The human warships shifted, sending docking ships toward the Dominion vessel. As they latched on, armed human soldiers poured in, their movements precise and efficient. They wore sleek, advanced armor, their weapons unlike anything the Dominion had ever seen. The crew offered no resistance. They had already lost. Kren watched as his officers were rounded up. When the soldiers finally reached him, he met Kane's gaze through the visor of the lead soldier. For the first time in his life, Kren saw something in an enemy's eyes that shook him to his core. It wasn't just hatred. It was patience. The humans had waited for this moment for centuries. Kane's voice echoed in his mind. You should have made sure we were dead. As Kren was escorted off his own bridge, he cast one last look at the view screen. The human fleet was already moving toward Dominion space. Earth had returned. And now, they were coming to finish what the Dominion had started. 4. The warship hovered in uneasy silence above Earth, its crew shaken. 2 teams lost. No distress calls, no remains, just sudden, violent disappearances. The bridge was tense, officers glancing at Admiral Kren, waiting for his next move. Even Volrek, who had been so eager to leave, said nothing now. The situation had gone beyond fear. This was something else. Kren's claws tapped against the control panel. Leaving wasn't an option anymore. Not after what they had seen. Something had taken the landing team, something that moved unseen through the ruins of a world that was supposed to be dead. If they turned back now, the Dominion would demand answers. And he had none. We need another approach, Kren said finally, his voice calm despite the tension. Deploy high-orbit surveillance drones. I want real-time imaging of every major city. Focus on areas where the landing team disappeared. The crew obeyed, launching a dozen small drones into the sky. They spread out over the planet, scanning ruins that had been untouched for centuries. The screens on the bridge flickered to life, showing desolate landscapes of broken streets, collapsed buildings, and rusting vehicles. Wind howled through empty skyscrapers, carrying dust and ash. For nearly an hour, nothing changed. The planet remained as lifeless as the Dominion had left it. But then, deep within the ruins of what had once been a great human city, something moved. A shadow darted between buildings, then another, and another. The drones zoomed in, their cameras adjusting, and for the first time, the crew got a clear look. Humanoids. Tall, armored figures moving with silent precision. Their armor was dark, sleek, not like anything the Dominion had ever seen. Their visors glowed faintly, scanning their surroundings. They moved in squads, vanishing into the ruins with practiced discipline. They weren't scavengers. They weren't survivors struggling to stay hidden. They were soldiers. Kren exhaled slowly. Zoom in. The image sharpened, revealing a symbol on one of their shoulders. A simple, ancient emblem. A blue sphere marked with white landmasses. Earth's flag. A cold realization settled over the crew. The humans hadn't been wiped out. They had survived, and they had spent centuries preparing for this moment. Volrick's voice was barely a whisper. They were never gone. A new signal flashed on the screen. The warship's sensors had picked up something massive rising from beneath the ruins. A buried structure. No, not a structure. A hangar. The earth cracked open as something began to ascend from its depths. And then the alarm screamed. A fleet. A hidden fleet. Hundreds of warships, long buried beneath the planet's surface, were now emerging into the skies. Their hulls gleamed with unfamiliar technology, their weapons primed and ready. Earth had never been abandoned. It had been waiting. And now, it was time for humanity to return. You said. The warship hovered in the empty void above Earth, its massive form casting a shadow over the lifeless planet. Silence filled the bridge as Admiral Kren stood motionless, his crimson eyes locked onto the darkened world below. His crew waited, tense and uncertain. The loss of the scout team had changed everything. The dead planet was no longer just a forgotten relic. It was hiding something. Volrick's claws tapped anxiously against the metal railing. "We should leave," he growled. "This is a cursed world. No one comes here. No one survives here." Kren ignored him. His mind was racing. If something had taken the scout team, it meant something was alive down there. But what? It couldn't be humans. That was impossible. The war that wiped them out had been absolute. The Dominion had seen to it personally. The last human colonies had burned, their fleets shattered, their homeworld left to rot. There was no chance of survival, no possibility of a return. Yet the silence of Earth now felt different. It was no longer the silence of death. It was the silence of something waiting. "Launch another probe," Kren ordered. A sleek, metallic drone shot out from the warship, descending rapidly toward the surface. The crew watched as its camera feed flickered to life, showing them the same ruined cities, the same endless wastelands of collapsed skyscrapers and crumbling roads. The wind howled through empty streets, sweeping across rusted vehicles and abandoned buildings. For several minutes, nothing happened. The crew shifted uncomfortably, watching the feed as the probe drifted through the ruins. The air was thick with dust, the sky a permanent gray from centuries of neglect. And then, something moved. It was fast. A shadow darted between the skeletal remains of a building. The probe adjusted, its camera zooming in on the movement, but whatever it was had already disappeared. The crew leaned in, their breaths shallow. "There's something down there," one of the officers whispered. Kren's eyes darkened, enhanced the footage. The screen flickered, the image sharpening. And then they saw it, just for a second. A figure, humanoid, wearing what looked like advanced armor, its dark visor reflecting the dim light of the ruined city. It stood still, staring directly into the probe's camera, as if it knew it was being watched. Then the feed cut to static. The bridge fell into chaos. Officers shouted, trying to recover the signal, but it was gone. Another probe lost. Another piece of evidence that Earth was not as empty as they had believed. Volrick's voice was low, filled with unease. This is not possible. Humans are extinct. Kren's grip tightened around the control panel. Then explain what we just saw. No one had an answer. The crew had always believed Earth to be nothing but ruins, a graveyard for a species long dead. But now something was down there. Something alive. Something watching them. For the first time in centuries, the silence of Earth had been broken, and the galaxy would never be the same. You said. The Dominion warship trembled under the onslaught. Fire and smoke filled the corridors as desperate crew members fought to stabilize failing systems. Admiral Kren's claws gripped the command console, his eyes locked on the tactical display. There was no escape. The human fleet surrounded them, cutting off every possible route. The impossible had happened. Humanity had returned, and they had outmatched the Dominion in every way. Admiral, engine power is failing. An officer shouted. Volrick turned, his usually arrogant expression replaced with sheer terror. We have to surrender. It's our only chance. Kren snarled. The word tasted like poison. He had never surrendered in his life. But this was not a battle he could win. A sharp beep interrupted his thoughts. A new transmission was coming through. Kren hesitated, then gave a sharp nod. Put it through. The screen flickered, revealing Admiral Elias Kane once more. Behind him, the bridge of his warship was calm, disciplined, untouched by the chaos Kren's own crew was drowning in. Kane's visor concealed his expression, but his voice was steady and cold. You're beaten, Kane said. Your shields are gone. Your weapons are crippled. Your fleet is outmatched. Kren remained silent, his pride warring with reality. You have two choices, Kane continued. Surrender now, and you will live. Resist, and I will make sure the Dominion remembers this day as the beginning of the end. Kren's claws dug into the metal console. The Dominion had crushed countless civilizations. No one had ever dared challenge them like this. But the humans, they were different. They had endured annihilation and still found a way to rise again. His silence stretched on too long. Kane tilted his head slightly. I suggest you decide quickly. My fleet is ready to fire. Kren's jaw tightened. He turned to his crew, seeing the fear in their eyes. They were warriors, but they weren't fools. They knew this fight was lost. With a slow, reluctant breath, Kren forced out the words he never thought he'd say. We surrender. The bridge remained silent, the weight of those words pressing down on them all. Kane gave a single nod. Wise choice. The transmission cut out. A moment later, the human warships adjusted their formation, encircling the Dominion vessel like a predator watching its prey. No more shots were fired, but the message was clear. Earth was not dead. Humanity was not gone. And now, they were coming for the Dominion. Panic rippled through the bridge as alarms blared, warning of the rising fleet below. Admiral Kren's crew scrambled to adjust sensors, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. It was impossible. The Dominion had burned this world centuries ago. Humanity was supposed to be extinct. And yet, warships, hundreds of them, were emerging from the ruins, their dark hulls reflecting the cold light of space. Kren's claws tightened around the console. Send a message to the Dominion High Command. Tell them. A sharp beep interrupted him. One of the officers turned, his face pale. We're being hailed. Kren's blood ran cold. By who? The officer hesitated. The fleet. Silence fell over the bridge. Every officer's gaze locked onto the main screen as the incoming transmission stabilized. A figure appeared, standing in the shadows of a command deck, their face concealed by a dark visor. The armor they wore was sleek, efficient, designed for war. When they spoke, their voice was calm, controlled, and unmistakably human. This is Admiral Elias Kane of the United Earth Defense Fleet. The bridge remained frozen. No one had spoken to a living human in centuries. They were a race of ghosts, legends of the past. And yet, here was one now, addressing them as if the Dominion had never destroyed their world. Kane continued, "You are trespassing in restricted space. Your forces will leave immediately, or we will remove you." Kren struggled to find his voice. This is impossible." Kane tilted his head slightly, the visor hiding whatever expression he might have had. "You thought we were gone." Kren swallowed hard. Humanity was wiped out. "No," Kane replied, his voice carrying a quiet, dangerous certainty. "You burned our cities. You hunted us across the stars. But you never finished the job." Kren's mind raced. If this was true, if humanity had been hiding, then what else had they been doing all these years? The answer was already in front of him. The fleet. They hadn't just survived. They had rebuilt. They had prepared. And now, they were ready. Volrek stepped forward, his voice a low whisper. "We need to leave. Now." Kren hesitated, then turned back to the transmission. "We did not come here to fight. Kane cut him off. "Your intentions are irrelevant. The Dominion murdered billions of our people. We have not forgotten." A sudden shift in energy readings made Kren's blood turn to ice. The human fleet was locking weapons, not as a warning, not as a show of force. They were preparing to fire. Kane's voice came one last time, quiet and final. "You should have made sure we were dead." The transmission cut off. A second later, Earth's fleet opened fire. One half. The Dominion's fleets had been mobilized. Every warship that could fly was now en route to intercept the human forces. Across the Empire, billions of soldiers prepared for battle, their leaders confident that sheer numbers would be enough to break the enemy's momentum. But as the Dominions might assembled, the humans moved with terrifying precision. On board the ISS Retribution, Admiral Elias Kane studied the tactical display. His fleet was outnumbered nearly 10 to 1, yet his expression remained calm. Numbers didn't matter. The Dominion still didn't understand what they were up against. "Status report," he ordered. Commander Alvarez stepped forward. "Phase 2 is complete. Admiral, every Dominion communications hub within 5 sectors has been neutralized." "They're blind." Kane nodded. "And the infiltration teams, already embedded on key Dominion worlds. Once the main engagement begins, they'll disable planetary defenses from within." For centuries, the Dominion had relied on brute force. They overwhelmed enemies through sheer military might. But humanity had learned something far more valuable in its long exile: patience. Every step of this war had been planned years in advance. Every move the Dominion made had been predicted. Kane turned his attention to the central Dominion fleet. It was massive, stretching across the void like a wall of death. But it was a wall with cracks that humanity was about to exploit. "Begin the assault," he ordered. The human fleet advanced. At first, the Dominion warships held their ground, confident that they could withstand the attack. Then, the first wave of human ships unleashed their weapons. Energy beams and kinetic slugs tore through Dominion hulls before their shields could react. Missiles moved with AI-guided precision, striking weak points with surgical accuracy. Dominion ships exploded in fire and debris, their defenses crumbling faster than anyone had expected. On the Imperator's will, Supreme Warlord Servok watched in horror. His fleet wasn't just losing, it was being taken apart. Every attempt to counterattack was met with a devastating response. The humans fought like predators, targeting command ships first, disrupting formation after formation. A cold realization settled over him. The Dominion had been at war for centuries, but they had never fought an enemy like this. Humanity had not just returned, they had evolved into something greater, something deadlier. Zervok's claws dug into his command chair. "Retreat," he growled. His officers hesitated, shocked by the order. "I said retreat," he roared. The Dominion fleet broke apart, warships fleeing in every direction. But the humans were relentless. They did not allow their enemies to escape. One by one, the Dominion ships were hunted down and destroyed. As Xervox's own flagship shook under fire, he knew the truth. The Dominion was dying, and humanity was delivering the final blow. The stars above Earth were quiet. For centuries, nothing had moved in the vast emptiness surrounding the once great planet. No ships, no signals, no life. The galaxy had long accepted that humanity was gone, wiped from existence by war, betrayal, and time itself. Earth had been abandoned, its surface left to decay under the weight of a past no one cared to remember. The silence was absolute. Among the many species of the galaxy, Earth was nothing more than a ghost world. The ruins of its cities stood like broken bones, scattered across the land, untouched and forgotten. No ships dared enter its orbit. No scavengers came to loot what remained. Even the war-hungry empires of the cosmos had no interest in a dead world. It was simply there, a reminder of what once was. A graveyard. Admiral Kren of the Xalcor Dominion stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at the lifeless planet through the massive viewport. His crimson eyes narrowed as he considered the reports. It was rare for anyone to even approach this sector, let alone scan the surface. But the Dominion had received strange readings, anomalies that defied explanation. Something on Earth was active. "This is a waste of time," grumbled his second-in-command, a towering brute named Volric. "Humans are dead. Their world is dead. There is nothing left." Kren did not respond immediately. Instead, he watched the readings on his display. A faint energy pulse. Something was there, something ancient yet alive. "Send a probe," he ordered. A sleek, black drone detached from the warship and sped toward the planet's surface, disappearing into the thick atmosphere. The bridge remained silent as they watched its descent. It passed over ruined cities, once thriving metropolises now overgrown and crumbling. It scanned the shattered remains of roads and buildings, structures that had stood for thousands of years but had long since been swallowed by time. The crew's expressions were bored until the readings changed. The probe detected movement, deep beneath the surface, in what was once a great underground facility. Something stirred. Energy readings spiked for a brief moment before vanishing again. It was brief, almost unnoticeable, but Kren saw it. His fingers tightened around the control panel. "Confirm the source," he said sharply. The probe attempted to scan deeper, but something disrupted its signal. A moment later, the feed cut off entirely. The bridge was filled with static. The probe was gone. A tense silence followed. The crew members glanced at each other, unease creeping into their expressions. Volric growled, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "It's just interference. A failing power core, maybe. This planet is dead." Kren wasn't so sure. The way the signal had vanished was too precise, too sudden. It wasn't a malfunction. It was something else, something deliberate. His gaze returned to the planet below. "Send a scout team," he ordered. Volric hesitated. "You can't be serious." "Now." The order was given. A small squadron of fighters launched from the warship, diving toward the surface. The crew watched their progress closely, their screens tracking every movement. The pilots reported in as they flew over the ruins, their voices calm, almost bored. Nothing but dust and decay. And then, a scream. The transmission cut out. One moment, the squad was there. The next, they were gone. Their signals vanished, just like the probe. No explosion, no warning, just silence. The bridge of the warship froze. The crew exchanged nervous glances, their confidence shaken. Admiral Kren clenched his jaw. Something was wrong. Something had taken them. For centuries, Earth had been silent. But now, something was waking up. "You said." The warship shuddered as the first blast struck. Streams of blue-white energy lanced through the void, slamming into the Dominion vessel's shields with terrifying force. The crew stumbled, alarms blaring. as Admiral Kren grabbed onto the command console to steady himself. The readings were impossible. Dominion warships had some of the most advanced shielding in the galaxy, but these human weapons were cutting through them like paper. Shields at 60%. An officer yelled. No, 50. They're dropping too fast. Return fire, Kren barked. The Dominion warship unleashed its own barrage, red beams streaking toward the human fleet. But as the blasts neared their targets, something unexpected happened. The human ships shimmered, then vanished. They're gone, Volric shouted, eyes wide. Impossible, Kren hissed. Scan for them. The sensors scrambled, sweeping the battlefield, but the readings made no sense. The human fleet had disappeared from visual tracking, but the energy signatures were still there, moving. Then, just as suddenly as they vanished, the ships reappeared, now in a new formation, weapons primed. They're using some kind of advanced cloaking, an officer stammered. Before anyone could react, the human warships unleashed another devastating volley. The Dominion ship's shields collapsed under the onslaught. Explosions rocked the hull as internal systems flickered and sparked. Shields offline. Weapons array damage. Admiral, we have to retreat, Volric shouted. Kren clenched his jaw. Retreat. He had never retreated from a battle in his life. But this wasn't a battle. This was annihilation. Full power to engines, he ordered. Break orbit. Get us out of here. The warship lurched forward, thrusters burning as it tried to escape Earth's gravity well. But the human fleet was faster, more coordinated. They moved with terrifying precision, predicting every maneuver, cutting off every escape route. They're targeting our engines. Another blast rocked the ship, and the power flickered. Kren gritted his teeth. If they didn't escape now, they never would. Then a new signal lit up the sensors, one that made Kren's blood freeze. Admiral, an officer whispered. It's not just Earth. Kren turned to the display. His mind refused to believe what he was seeing. Across the sector, hundreds of ships were emerging from deep space hiding spots, human warships, hidden in asteroid belts, dormant under ice-covered moons, concealed within nebulae. The Dominion had scored the galaxy, thinking they had erased humanity. But the truth was clear now. The humans had never been extinct. They had simply been waiting. And now, they were everywhere. A final transmission came through. Admiral Kane's voice, calm and deadly. You thought you won. You thought we were gone. The human fleet moved in for the kill. Now it's our turn.